The Civil War had barely stretched its legs when Missouri, a border state with a split personality, became a battleground of loyalties. Half the state leaned Union, the other half whispered Dixie. Governor Claiborne Fox Jackson, a Southern sympathizer with a name that sounds like a bourbon brand, was scheming to drag Missouri into the Confederacy. The federal government, meanwhile, was frantically trying to keep Missouri in the Union fold, like trying to hug a porcupine. Born in Prince Edward County, Virginia, in 1809, Sterling Price was the son of a tobacco planter. He had the kind of upbringing that involved Latin tutors, land speculation, and a whole lot of stubbornness. He moved to Missouri in the 1830s, tried his hand at storekeeping and tobacco commission work, and promptly failed at both. But politics, that was his jam. He married Martha Head, daughter of a wealthy judge, and together they had 7 children. Price was charming, tall, and had the kind of face that looked like it had been carved by a drunk sculptor with a chisel and a grudge. He rose through Missouri politics, eventually becoming governor from 1853 to 1857, where he was known for his populist leanings and his ability to hold a grudge longer than a Missouri winter. When the Mexican-American War broke out, Price resigned from Congress, joined the Army, and ended up as military governor of New Mexico, where he crushed the Taos Revolt and fought battles even after the war was technically over. That's right, he kept fighting after the peace treaty was signed. That's Sterling Price in a nutshell. Fast forward to August 10, 1861, at Wilson's Creek, Missouri. Price, alongside Confederate General Ben McCulloch, faced off against Union General Nathaniel Lyon. Lyon was killed in action, and Price's Missouri State Guard sent the Union forces packing. It was a messy, bloody victory, but it gave Price the confidence to push northward, aiming to liberate Missouri from Union control. Born in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, in 1814, James Henry Lane was the son of a lawyer and politician. He studied law, served in the Mexican-American War, and even voted for the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which he later regretted more than a bad haircut. Lane moved to Lawrence, Kansas, in 1855 and became a firebrand for the Free State movement. He was never technically an abolitionist, but he hated slavery with the kind of passion usually reserved for bad whiskey and losing poker hands. He married Mary E. Lane, and together they had children, but Lane's true love was Kansas. He became the leader of the Jayhawkers, a group of Unionist guerrillas who believed in swift justice, swift horses, and zero patience for Confederate sympathizers. The Jayhawkers raided Missouri towns, burned farms, and executed suspected rebels. Their motto might as well have been, "If it smells Southern, torch it." Lane was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1861, but he didn't let politics stop him from leading armed raids. He was a senator with a sword, and he wasn't afraid to use it. On September 2, 1861, Price's army, now swollen to 6,000 to 10,000 men, was marching toward Fort Scott, Kansas. Lane, with a ragtag force of 600 to 1,200 volunteers, decided to intercept him near Drywood Creek in Vernon County, Missouri. Now, Drywood Creek wasn't exactly Gettysburg. It was a sleepy stream named for the dried-out wood that burned easily during a drought, according to local lore. The terrain was rugged, with rolling hills, thick woods, and a creek that meandered like a drunk snake. The area was known for its unpredictable weather and its ability to turn into a mud pit at the slightest hint of rain. Lane's men were volunteers, farmers, shopkeepers, and teenagers with more courage than training. Their weapons ranged from muskets to pitchforks. Their supply train was a chaotic parade of mules, which would later become the punchline of the entire affair. Price's men, on the other hand, were fresh off a win, well-armed and battle-hardened. They had artillery, cavalry, and the kind of morale that comes from kicking Union tail at Wilson's Creek. Lane's decision to confront them was either heroic or suicidal. Probably both. The sun was high, the air thick with tension, and the creek, Drywood Creek to be exact, was about to become the stage for one of the Civil War's most chaotic curtain-raisers. Brigadier General James H. Lane, the fiery Kansas senator turned guerrilla commander, had set up a defensive line near the creek. His men, roughly 600 to 1,200 volunteers, were a mix of farmers, shopkeepers, and idealists with more courage than coordination. Their weapons ranged from muskets to squirrel rifles and their supply train was a parade of mules, wagons, and wishful thinking. Lane's plan? Hold the line against Major General Sterling Price, whose 6,000 to 10,000 Missouri State Guardsmen were marching south like a thundercloud with bayonets. Price's scouts were the first to make contact. These were hardened men, veterans of Wilson's Creek, and they knew how to probe a line. They fired a few shots, tested Lane's defenses, and then pulled back to report, "Sir, they've got mules. Lots of mules." Price, never one to waste an opportunity, ordered a full advance. His men surged forward, muskets cracking, sabers flashing, and cannons booming like angry gods. The battlefield erupted. Smoke filled the air, thick as molasses. Muskets fired in ragged volleys. Cannons roared, sending shockwaves through the trees. Lane's men held their ground for about 15 minutes. Then came the mules. Spooked by the cannon fire, the mules panicked. They bolted, dragging supply wagons into the woods like toddlers on sugar highs with shopping carts. One eyewitness claimed a wagon full of hardtack crashed into a tree, showering the forest with biscuits. Another swore he saw a mule leap a creek and vanish into the mist like a ghost with hooves. Lane's line collapsed. His men, outnumbered and outgunned, began to retreat in disarray. Some tried to rally. Others followed the mules. A few just sat down and waited for the shooting to stop. Price's forces swept in, capturing the abandoned supply train, including hundreds of mules, crates of ammunition, and enough coffee to keep a regiment awake for a week. His men cheered. One soldier reportedly said, "We came for a fight and left with a farm." Thus, the skirmish earned its nickname, the Battle of the Mules. Lane retreated to Fort Scott, bruised but breathing. From there, he limped back to Kansas City, where he regrouped and began plotting vengeance. His pride was wounded, his mules were gone, and his reputation had taken a hit, but Lane was the kind of man to stay down. Price, meanwhile, turned east toward Lexington, Missouri, where he would win another battle later that month. He didn't press on to capture Fort Scott, a decision historians still debate. Why didn't Price take Fort Scott? Some say he missed a golden opportunity to strike deep into Union territory. Others argue he was consolidating control in Missouri, focusing on rallying Confederate sympathizers and securing supply lines. Either way, the Union breathed a sigh of relief. Fort Scott remained in Union hands, and Lane, humiliated but unbroken, began a campaign of vengeance that would blur the line between military action and personal vendetta. Lane doubled down on his Jayhawker tactics, leading raids into Missouri that burned towns, executed suspected rebels, and terrorized Confederate sympathizers. He once said, "I would rather see every man in Missouri dead than see it fall to the Confederacy." Subtlety was not his strong suit. James H. Lane continued his political career in the Senate, led brutal raids that earned him both praise and condemnation, struggled with mental health and political pressure, died by suicide in 1866, haunted by war, politics, and personal demons. Sterling Price became a Confederate hero in Missouri, led the Price Raid in 1864, a disastrous campaign that ended in retreat. Died in 1867, still believing in the Southern cause, surrounded by loyalists and regrets. The Battle of Drywood Creek wasn't a grand clash of armies, it was a chaotic, muddy, mule-stampeded mess that perfectly captured the early war's confusion. It showed how ambition, miscalculation, and sheer stubbornness could turn a skirmish into a legend. So next time someone tells you history is boring, tell them about the day a senator lost a battle, a herd of mules, and his temper, all before lunch. And remember, folks, subscribe to our channel for more tales of grit, gunpowder, and glorious blunders from America's past. Because history isn't just about dates, it's about drama.